And we are loading. Hopefully this time it works. No. Oh, got it. Yeah. Welcome. Okay. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Nice. Already 2 people in the room. Hi, everybody. So welcome in Mining for Vervaeke live stream. And as always, with a panel from Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server, we are discussing terms that we find in John's lecture series. Please check them out. I will provide the links below. Today's term is reciprocal narrowing. So let me, guys, read you what I found on reciprocal narrowing. Okay. In cognitive science, reciprocal narrowing refers to how the brain adapts to new experiences and environments. There. It's our brain's adaptation ability. And I would like you guys to ask, like, what do you know about reciprocal narrowing, like in a couple of sentences?
Go ahead, Ray.
No, I wanted to say that it's a pleasure to be here. And of course, Valeria, please, you have the first floor after Karen.
Yeah, I wanted to say that it's a specific kind of adaptation, right? And it's the kind of adaptation that makes things smaller, that makes reduces the cognitive flexibility, and then reduces your world, and then you see less possibilities. And because you have less possibilities for how to see the world, you have less possibilities for how to act in the world, and that gets into this cycle where it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's instead of adaptation, it's more like maladaptive. Adapting in the negative direction that gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Thank you. Peter?
We lost someone. Hope he's back.
It's okay. Ebenezer will be back.
So reciprocal narrowing is exactly what it sounds like. It's just as Valeria said, it's a narrowing of yourself and a narrowing of your world that reciprocally feeds back on itself. And so over time, it becomes your world gets smaller and you get smaller in your own world. And it's all this process of this process of adaptation that's gone wrong through parasitic processing. And so it's parasitic, and it sucks everything that's good out of your life. So that's what reciprocal narrowing is.
Sounds fun. Harris?
Yeah, as Valeria and Peter said before, reciprocal narrowing has to do with a process basically of reducing our cognitive flexibility, our relevance realization that we got the chance to analyze during the previous stream, and of course our sense of agency. So as Peter mentioned, we are getting trapped in a feedback loop of this parasitic processing that is distinguished and is not the same as opponent processing. Opponent processing is something that actually can be really helpful as it can give us the right amount of conflict that is necessary in order to progress, let's say. But parasitic processing is something that brings us down. So this is a kind of self-deceptive and self-destructive, let's say, behavior that actually can be actually be linked, as Professor Vervaeke said, with addiction. That's one of the primary examples that they are associated with that. On the other hand, I would also like to mention that there is not only reciprocal narrowing, there is also the opposite, which is the good thing, let's say, that it has to do with the reciprocal opening. That's it.
Thank you so much. Ebenezer, what do you know about reciprocal narrowing?
To me, the image that always comes up is a spiral into a hole. It seems like, because yeah, and it's like a ball. It's slowly spiraling down into a hole. Yeah, but every time it tries to go, like every time the force is trying to pull it out, it directs it closer to the center of the hole. Yeah, and it's the same way with the way that the brain works. It's like whatever you see around you is pushing you closer to the center of that hole, and you're slowly going down. Yeah, that's the way I think of reciprocal narrowing.
Wow, that's beautiful, actually, like very visual. Like it's
Yeah.
your interaction with the environment. It's like
Yeah.
you interact, and the more, and you get
Yeah,
more.
it's slowly. It's like the environment is directing you towards the center. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. So I will show the clip that I found the best clip, and like a lot of people found the same clip and sent it to me. Thank you all. And we will just talk about it and see how can we make it even simpler. And Ebenezer explained. That's, hopefully it works. There, sound on. Do you guys see it? Not yet. Oh, works. Yeah.
I've already argued that movement is the nexus for the couplings, the meta coupling that is at the core of participatory knowing, at the core of your identity and agency. It's at the core of the brain body, the sensory motor, and the brain body world coupling. But here's the thing we have to know about participatory knowing. It can also go wrong. Here's a primary example of this, instance of it. Not the only one, but a good one. And this is based on work of my friend and colleague, Mark Lewis, who also, like me, is part of the 4E camp, understanding cognition in terms of dynamical, self-organized, adaptive coupling to the world. Here's the thing about Mark. He uses that framework to understand emotion, and more importantly, for what we're going to talk about right now, addiction. And he talks about addiction in a way that's different than how we currently talk about it. We currently talk about addiction as if it's a disease that we catch that then compels our behavior. Mark and many others are now arguing that that model doesn't fit the data well at all. Does not fit. It's a bad analogy. Instead, Mark proposes what he calls a process that addiction is the result of what he calls reciprocal narrowing. Let's do it very quickly. I'm in some very stressful situation. So I drink some alcohol to try and alleviate the stress, and it does. It alleviates the anxiety and the stress, and that's wonderful. So I get an immediate sort of short-term relief. The problem is, what that does is it actually reduces my cognitive flexibility, that adaptive seeking behavior. It changes my perspectival knowing. Think about the same room when you're sober and when you're drunk. Okay? So it reduces my cognitive flexibility. What does that mean? Well, that means the number of problems and the number of options in my world also decrease. That's scary. That's anxiety producing. That's already going to start to limit my cognitive flexibility, because if I scare you and produce a lot of anxiety, your cognitive flexibility goes down. Also, this is to put you into what's called a scarcity mentality. When things are seeming more scarce to you, you also get way more cognitively rigid. Okay, so now my cognition narrows a bit, and then the options have gone down, and then that's scary and anxiety producing, and then my cognitive flexibility narrows even more. I get even more rigid, and I'll probably take more alcohol to try and deal with that. And then my world is narrowing, and then what happens is my world and my cognition, the arena and the agent, reciprocally narrow until, and listen to the participatory language here, I can't be anything other than I am, and the world can't be any other than it is. There's no options for me, and I am fated and doomed to do what I do. And that's addiction.
Yeah, that definitely made a huge impression on me. It's like, so excellent delivery. Thank you, John. Okay, guys, what are your thoughts on that video? What stood out? And I would like to hear from Peter first.
Well, that was beautifully put, as John usually does. One of the things that I'm still a little confused about regarding reciprocal narrowing is the reducing of options, because I know that the options in your world reduces, and then that reduces your cognitive flexibility, which then reduces options in the world. Oh, it's the other way around. It's cognitive flexibility in the world.
And then you see less possibilities.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so it's there's these two aspects to it that causally feed back into each other, but couldn't you draw that all as just one thing, as just like a list of options? Or is there actually two lists? There's the list of options and then the sub list of options that you can actually take. Is it something more like that?
I think he's seeing the options that are available to you. And the options that are available to you are the options that you can see, right? Because if you cannot see them, they are not available to you.
Okay. Yeah. So then I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to work out something that I guess is circular in nature, in like a hard, concrete, logical statement and stuff. But I can see it how it's if it does have that feedback loop, and each time it reiterates, you shave off some options, then that will eventually that'll narrow, yeah, over time. Every time you iterate, it'll become narrower and narrower. Okay, so I can now see how it has to be too, because it has to bounce back into itself. You can't just write it out as just a list.
You can think about it concretely as like, you get more annoying and then you lose one friend, and then you have one friend less, one source of support less. And because you have less support in your life gets harder. So you become more annoying, and now you lose the next friend.
Yes, that would make sense. Yeah,
but that's the idea that I get from it, at least.
That's interesting. I was wondering whether, like, because it seems the way he's talking about it, it always starts with the action that is taken as a reaction to judgment. So you make a judgment on the world, and then you act upon that judgment. Like, this situation is bad. And then the actions that you take either reciprocally open or reciprocally narrow.
Right. Yeah, I remember learning about that in the model. In parasitic processing, it starts off as interpreting an event as bad. And so I thought maybe, well, just don't interpret anything as bad and like problem solved, you know? But I don't know if that's practical or viable.
But that's a little bit what CBT does, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, that's true.
They tell you to write down your thoughts and then see, okay, is there another way of seeing that?
Oh, I see.
So you might not have to interpret every event that you originally interpreted as bad with CBT, but you will have to interpret some events as bad that are actually bad, I suppose. I mean, my understanding of CBT is you use your cognition to correct. It's like system 2, the higher order, more the cognition that corrects the intuition, because you'll have like a automatic response or emotional response to something, and then CBT comes in to add another layer of vetting to your emotions to make sure that what you're feeling is actually in line with everything else. And so, so I guess you do have to interpret some events as bad, but with CBT, you can get the events that were false positives that were bad, that shouldn't have been interpreted as bad, and get those ones corrected so you don't spiral down in parasitic processing. But something that I can't work out then is what if you're suffering something like something outside of your control? Like what if you're forced into like a concentration camp? You know, you've got all these horrible events happening to you, and I don't think enough. I don't know. I mean, maybe enough CBT can help you cope with that, but I mean, I can't see any way out of having to interpret some events as bad. So this problem's always there.
Let me give a concrete example that maybe will help. So I come home and my husband is in a bad mood and a bit snappy. So I start thinking, what have I done? What is he upset at me? What's going on here? And then because I'm in this negative state, all the bad things about our marriage start coming in my mind, and I get into this anxiety, and then I snap at him back. Compare that to I come home and my husband is a bit snappy and in a bad mood, and I think, what have I done? And that's the cognitive flexibility. Or maybe he just had a bad day. And instead of being snappy and getting into this loop, I just ask him lovingly, hey, what's, and then
that's why I think the choice comes. But while you guys were talking, I've been trying to see the good aspects of reciprocal narrowing. And I was thinking of like playing golf, because I tried to learn how to play golf a few months ago, in fact last year. And it was interesting how I was narrowing my skills or my technique based on the shots that I made. So I'd take a shot, if I would judge it as good or as bad, and then I would reciprocally narrow my technique based on that. I would associate the posture that I had or the technique that I used with a bad shot or a good shot. And over time, those associations would become more solid. And it would either make my golf skills better or worse.
Paris, what do you think?
Yeah, basically, one thing that I wanted to add from what I've heard is that even in very difficult situations and circumstances, sometimes a shift in perspective can create a very big change. And sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. So sometimes you get caught up in a negative loop, let's say, feedback loop of this parasitic processing. Some other times it gets, let's say, it comes into fruition, something good. So that's reciprocal opening. And as I understand it, trying to link it back to self-realization and everything together, let's say, this basically the meaning crisis, the loss of meaning that we experience in our current times as a whole, let's say, arises out of this parasitic processing, let's say, that is taking place, these negative feedback loops. So one of the values, let's say, that John's work actually gives to us all is to provide us with a way to safely guide us away from to awaken from the meaning crisis, basically. So yeah, I'm trying to connect all the pieces together.
Mhm.
What do you think, Kara?
So in reference to what John is doing, I think if we will able to recognize the processes happening with us, if we would be able to name it, let's say, the first step towards slaying a beast is naming it, it's recognizing it. Like that's the first thing. If we are unaware of what is actually going on with us, if we are unaware that we are getting into that smaller hole, we will not be like, let me paraphrase it, it will be more difficult for us to get out of that hole or to use those tools. And the association that I have with reciprocal narrowing is from a TV show you probably have never heard of called Big Mouth. And there was kind of the demons were actually shown how they look like. And there was a demon called Depression Kitty. So when a girl was falling into depression, Depression Kitty would come and she would like encompass her. She would be a giant kitty. She would lie on her and she was like, there, do not go out of this room. It's you and this room. It's you and this bed. And so she basically made the girl's world smaller. It was, her actions were staying in bed or going like to the kitchen, then coming back to bed. Like she was like basically her walls narrowed down around her, and the entire room, the other space of the room was filled with Depression Kitty. So that's what I was thinking about. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. Like the more time passed, the bigger the kitty got and the smaller the room got, basically. That's kind of my analogy to that.
Oh, that was nice. That was nice.
I've had depression, and I remember that it starts with the things get less and less fun. So, and that's how I learned not to get depressed. It's like not falling, not letting it narrow, actually, because somebody would invite me to do something, and then it's like, yeah, that's not going to be fun. That's going to be a drag, and it's not worth the trouble.
And then the connections are made between other situations where it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the more I just stay home, the more I don't know, you get used to being alone. If you go out, you get used to going out, right? You learn to like to explore. Opposing to that was when I came backpacking in Europe, and I had all these comforts that I did not have. And in the beginning, they were big, like uncomfortable, like not sleeping in a proper mattress, sleeping in a camping mattress, and all of us, bit by bit, you get used to it, and then you get more possibilities because you need less comfort, so you have less more things that you can do. You enjoy the company of more people.
Wait, so which different choice did you make in that situation? And like in terms of you perceiving the world, which choice did you, what was different between that choice and when you were reciprocally narrowing?
One technique in cognitive behavioral therapy is that do not believe your emotional predictions. So I predict that going out is going to be 100% a drag and it's going to be 100% horrible. And then I go out anyway and find out, okay, that was just 80% a drag. So
Yeah.
maybe I can, and next time it's 50%, and then in a few days I'm actually having fun.
Yeah. And see, so that's what happened when you went out and did all this camping. You had this preconceived perception But
It's
what?
actually different times in my life. So.
Yes. Two different times. But what like made you get out of the possibility that it would be bad, and then reciprocally narrow?
I didn't believe the depression telling me that it was going to be terrible, because that's the thing. When your brain narrows down, that it's like I am more afraid because there are more things that people can say that will hurt me or will make me embarrassed or will make me ashamed or will make me feel bad. This I trust less my capacity to just find, I don't know, like in the example with the fight with my husband, right? Where I find different possibilities for why people are acting the way they are. You just focus, you narrow focus on the negative.
I see.
Basically, we create this, what do you say? We create this monster of an experience that is going to come, let's say, that is often based on our internal environmental state, let's say, our inner state. And when we, if we follow this CBT paradigm, and we actually face our fear, then we realize that it wasn't so harsh after all. So you get this, you move away from the negative feedback and into positive realization, let's say.
I was thinking about those feedback back loops that people get into. The idea that other people, how do we know that other people will be unbearable to us? Like, I do remember that state when I really like to stay alone at home. Like I did not like to see other people, because other people would, every time they would see me, they were like, oh my God, what happened to you? And there would be like this mirror holding up, like something is wrong with me. And I did not want to hear that something is wrong with me. It was like, I wanted, like I was comfortable in a place where I'm alone, when nobody sees this, when nobody like exposes me to the changes I have gone through, like that I'm not cheerful or something like that. And yeah, and it's feedback loop. So the more you stay at home, the more you are afraid of people. And the more you're afraid of people, the more people will like notice something is wrong with you. So you're like hiding even more. So, yeah.
It's like you preempt the, I guess, the environment. But this is this when that goes wrong? Because preempting then that, like, yeah, when you assume that something is going to happen and it does, then that could be helpful. But this seems like an overestimation. Like with the argument, you overestimate the the emotions of your husband. So that would cause an overreaction from you. And then it's like a ball rolling down a hill.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So something I want to point out I thought was really interesting was Valeria's the description of the CBT technique, where you mentally know what you think is going to happen, then you do the thing, and then you compare it what actually happened to the mental note. And I mean, I think that's a very strong strategy for overcoming reciprocal narrowing, because if you act upon the impulse and then you follow through with that, then you'll necessarily narrow, just as Ebenezer said. And so yeah, I think CBT can be a very powerful tool for overcoming reciprocal narrowing. But the thing that I'm trying to address or to overcome is the idea that since we're interlinked with our environment, what happens if our environment is one such that it's too much? So so what if we're encountering events that, what if you have the preconceived expectation, and then you go and do the action, and then it ends up being worse than what you thought was going to happen before. Now you don't have a choice in your narrowing. And so that's what I'm trying to find a way to inoculate against. And I don't know how to solve that problem.
The example that you gave with the concentration camp, it's extreme, right? And with extreme examples, that there are situations that are very, very hard. And still, amazingly, some people still manage sometimes to get something good out of it. Like Viktor Frankl.
Like Viktor
is the example.
Frankl, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So I what I want to know is how Viktor Frankl did that, you know? So how did he get through that without losing himself to it? I know that he said that he called it mental hygiene or psycho hygiene or something like that, moral hygiene. He used that word hygiene quite a bit. And he didn't suffer his moral hygiene or psychological hygiene from suffering that. You know, he didn't lose himself to that. And but he never told his secret. I mean, his secret was you just have to have meaning in life. And so, but I guess it's more like I want to know exactly what that was, so that anybody can go and face anything and they'll be fine. But I guess
know
that's
when you
just
find it.
So yeah.
I see.
The ultimate solution to the perennial problem. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I'm looking for an ultimate solution to the perennial problems. Yeah.
I see. To me, it seems like the turning point for this situation is when the similarities arise in your head. You encounter a negative situation, or you judge a situation as negative, and then the associations that come up sort of entice you into that fixed perspective. But there's a point there where you can, I guess, the way I think of it is that you open your mind up to an opposite. Like you look around you at all these things that are pointing towards one possibility, that the situation is awful, and you open your mind up to the opposite of that, and you have those two talk to each other. That would seem like a possible out for me, and that's the way that I do it.
Well, you know, one of the things that I recall hearing at the at the conference that Vervaeke went to with Paul Van de Clay and Jonathan Pajot was talking about how one of the things that the apostles did when they were being killed was they would aim for the highest thing that they could think of. They would try to think of something that was like the ultimate good. While all these horrible things were happening to them, they were still trying to aim at something that they thought was more valuable than themselves, or something like that. And that kind of stuck with me. I haven't really been able to fully make sense of that. And he only kind of said it in passing, I think, as just a supporting comment to what Vervaeke was saying. But that, I mean, that's something that I think connects in with what you just said.
So with reciprocal narrowing, there is no greater perspective. There's no God's eye view, you'd say, that will remove you from narrowing and focusing.
Right. But like what you were saying, you could still focus on something else. You could still try to figure out what you can focus on and to focus on that. And these early apostles, when they were suffering torturous deaths, they would still try to focus on the thing that was ultimately of value to them. So I think it fits right in.
Let me put something there that might be of help or not. It's the Stoics, and I've managed to do a little bit more of that in my own life, and it has helped me, so I can vouch for it. They evaluate the goodness and the badness of the situation based on what's in their hands. So it's good if I act in a moral, virtuous way. It's bad if I did not act in a moral, virtuous, moral way. So the things that are out of my hand, they are out of my hand. Judging them as good or bad, it's pointless.
Doesn't matter.
So yeah. And if you train yourself to see more through that lenses, then you gain a lot of agency in a way that it's like, I think I managed to do that shift a little bit in my life. So when the things that distress me the most are the ones that I do not know what is the right thing to do, which is probably due to some inner conflict and something that is unresolved in me. So yeah, I guess if I'm full of inner conflict, it's okay to feel bad about it.
Yeah, what I wanted to add here is that by assigning meaning to what we do, by meaningful imposition, sometimes we get to taste this transcendent function. So maybe we are not very familiar with what that is. We rely on our faith in order to not engage into a negative loop, but keep on performing the good struggle, let's say, or giving the good fight of life. So
Right.
sometimes I remember one line from Jung that he referenced. It was in Latin. I don't remember the Latin text, but it was in the book The Undiscovered Self. So it had to do with you can throw away nature with a pitchfork, but eventually she will always come back. So also this has to do with the discovery of the self, I think. And maybe if we accept both aspects of this reciprocal entrism, as I call it, that is taking place between each agent and the arena, we can also try to discover also ourselves and maybe how we can awaken from this crisis of meaning and everything else.
I like what you said in the beginning, Harris, because it made me understand why the Stoic thing works. Because if I am putting my best, if I am trying my best, somehow that's connecting me to the good, which is something that is bigger than me. And that's the meaning that pulls me out of the narrowing, even when things are difficult. I obviously never had been in a situation that was truly horrible. So I'm not saying that it's but it has helped me when things were a little bit worse. So I don't know.
Is it you said when you try your best?
When I am devoted to doing the best out of the situation, to act, to take any bad situation with virtue and yeah, and love and whatever, I don't know. Use your favorite word there.
I've been trying to connect habit and reciprocal narrowing because it doesn't seem like it's appeared. We've looked at one particular situation and how you can reciprocally narrow in it, but over time you could also reciprocally narrow through habit. Yeah. So I was trying to make the connection between that and what you were saying about trying your best. Like, if trying your best gets you out of reciprocally narrowing, then what's the opposite of that?
You can get good habits, good mental
Yeah.
hygiene habits.
Yeah.
The reciprocaling open, the
Opening.
inverse, yeah.
So these are repetitive actions that open your mind to, I guess, your agency in an environment.
Maybe it has
Yeah.
to do with novelty. Like maybe you make the conscious decisions to move away from pessimism towards optimism, and maybe try something away from breaking your routines, your bad routines, let's say, or giving away, exchanging basically your bad addictions with a good hobby. So I don't know, quitting smoking for playing bowling, something like this. You try to, or golf or whatever. So you are trying to find your way out of the maze in a way.
Another thing that I realized is that you can also reciprocally narrow in the way that you're dealing with your bad habits. In the sense like you can get very angry at yourself if let's say you're a drunkard and you keep drinking, but the way that you deal with the bad habit in itself could also reciprocally narrow your cognition. Yeah.
There was something I did want to go back and try and clarify earlier on, Ebenezer. You said that when you were practicing golf, for example, you could zero in on your skill and hone that skill, and that was kind of like a reciprocal narrowing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's reciprocal narrowing is applied to zeroing in or relevance realization itself. I think it's more of it. It seems to have a more concrete negative connotation to it. Which is why I think Vervaeke had the opposite of reciprocal opening. And so I think there's a difference between reciprocal narrowing and zeroing in or honing something. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's why I was trying to discern with the example. It was more of a question rather than an answer, but I was trying to discern between the negative aspects of reciprocal narrowing and the helpful I guess helpful aspects of it. Yeah.
I see. Okay. So what is the difference then?
Yeah, Peter's intervention was really good. I also wanted to make this clarification a bit, but I think also what Ebenezer is saying also has value, and because there are at least some situations that is actually helpful. So imagine the following scenario: you are like a software engineer and you are working in a team, and you are trying to come up with a strategy in order to build resilience in your system. So it would be great if we are able to, let's say, perform some type of unstructured interviews where we ask different users, for example, how do they perceive the vulnerabilities in the system, and people that will start getting into these negative spirals, and actually that will help the designers to build up a very good map that will help the system to build the resilience and maybe even sustainability, let's say, against external attacks and all of that. So that's my 2 cents.
In that example, I noticed that the people who were testing the software would be reciprocally narrowing, but the programmers wouldn't.
I think John means something more existential and more pervasive when he talks about reciprocal narrowing. It's like it goes to the participatory level. So my identity. So when you were talking about golf, I thought about the workaholic that works too much and then has less interesting things in his life. So there has nothing to do. So he works too much until he burns out.
At this point, I just wanted to give a small insight. Let's say when people go to a job interview, one of the greatest tips anyone ever told me was like, at the end of the interview, when the employer asks you, what do you identify as your weakness? If you say, I am a workaholic, they will love that. So
A perfectionist.
Yeah. Oh, that's fitting.
Perfectionist though, like imagine a perfectionist would like spend days to write one email because it isn't perfect.
Yeah, that's inefficient.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. And that's a sense in which they reciprocally narrow. Let's say you have
Yeah.
all these possible, like, I guess, no, not conversations. Let's say business ventures, but you're a perfectionist, so you're focusing on all the emails that you're sending, and it takes you 5 hours to send one email.
It's like
So that
you
will reduce
only
the
narrow to your ideal.
Yeah, it will reduce the amount of, I guess, business ventures that you're taking because you're taking too long to send an email, and then that will make you focus on the ones that you like. It'll start to reduce that.
Yeah, that's good.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that that was good, and that perfection is sometimes destroys our cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
This idea of cognitive flexibility. Oh, I remember sometimes when I was programming, and then the program had a bug, and I kept insisting on it, and I couldn't let go. It felt all of a sudden finding that bug felt so important that nothing else was important. And then I would get more irritated because I didn't find it. And the more irritated I got, the more my capacity diminished. The more irritated I got, the more. And
Yeah.
So you
until I
enter
finally realized that just going for a walk and coming back with a fresh mind, that was the way to go.
Why did you fixate on that problem? That's what I'm wondering, because it seems like the pattern is you have this thing that you defined as bad, the bug, or whatever it was, and then you make, okay, there's the gap there, but after that is when you decide to focus on it more, and then you get the stress, and then you try and focus on it more, and then
Yeah. It reminds me of the
So-
nine
so
dot
what's the-
problem.
What was the why? Why did you fixate on it so much?
It's the lack of the cognitive flexibility. I am a programmer, and in this moment, that's all that I am.
Yeah.
And the only arena that is available to me is this program.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So it seems like you were only looking at problem solving from a programmer sense. Like the only way to solve any problem is to write down some code instead of going for a walk.
That's the only problem that I can see.
So you should, like, it's almost like you limited your agency to programmer.
You super focus.
And that doesn't
right.
really,
Right, the super focus. Yeah. So I mean I want to go back to what Ebenezer was saying about the honing of the skill. Is there is something there that doesn't, I mean, one of the things that Vervaeke said is these processes are not inherently bad. They're what make us so adaptively intelligent. Mm-hmm. The things that make us so adaptively intelligent also make us prone to self-destructive, self-deceptive practices. And so this idea of learning, of being coupled with the environment and reciprocating with it, and then like zeroing in, it can go wrong. I think that's exactly right. And what Valeria was saying about the frame making and then being stuck within that frame, that reminded me of the 9-dot problem, where you approach it with the unconscious projection that it's a square. And so you're trying to operate within that frame, but because you've got this fundamental frame that you're not aware of, that you're always looking through, trying to solve the problem in that, there's something very powerful about being able to walk away from it all, go for a walk, and then come back. I'm a programmer too, and I know that that's a very helpful strategy, and that's helped me more than once. And so, but I don't know why it works. I just know that it does.
It works. It works.
It's the same as sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But is there a way to be able to do that on demand? To be in the
Yes.
problem and then just like, I don't need to take a walk because I can just and like zoom out and zoom back in, you know, and problem solved.
My dad, he wasn't a programmer. He was a health inspector. So he knew a couple of things about what you said before, hygiene factors. So also there is something from operations research from Herzberg that also mentions the hygiene factors as the following thing. Maybe sometimes you don't introduce a new measure, let's say, in order to make things better, but you introduce it in order to prevent things from getting worse. So that has to do with the hygiene aspect of it. And going back to what the technique that my late father was giving me, whenever I stumbled with a problem that I was trying to solve and I couldn't find a solution, what he was doing was the following. He started talking about he started telling me a story, something completely irrelevant.
Different. Oh.
And different.
A
And
disruptive strategy.
yeah, and almost always it worked because from by listening, let's say, by engaging in active listening, the mind ventures away from that negative loop, and maybe you can actually find a solution of the problem you are busting your head before to solve, and you couldn't. So yeah.
Wow, yeah, it's amazing.
There
That
is
quite
a
powerful.
technique for when your mind is fixated on something, or your mind wants to go to something, taking your mind away from it and putting it on another thing. You can train that. That's what you do in meditation, right?
Mhm.
The mind goes somewhere and it's like, nope, mind, come back. And if you train that enough, then when it happens in life, you can do that automatically.
It becomes something that you allow rather than something that controls you, which you could say reduces suffering in a sense, because you don't lose agency to things that you would without the practice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into cognitive flexibility and reciprocal opening as well. Before that, before we start with the clip, I would like to tell a story. So when I was a child, about 11 years old, I was in bed for entire summer. I had an illness that had an excruciating amount of physical pain. And so like I could not hang out with friends because everything was hurting, basically, like even people. And so my world was shrinking to me, my pain, the ceiling and the trees outside. And when Peter talked about concentration camp, I like, you guys, like, what was he found in, like, where the escape is? I was mentally flying like a bird, like I was flying out of the room in my mind to those trees outside, and I was like imagining that I'm not in my body and I was outside over there, free. So I was like practicing this some sort of escape by my mind thing. I don't know, is it like reciprocal opening or like is it some other mechanism? Because reciprocal opening I associate with love, new possibilities, this newness, when you kind of, oh my God, there is so many new possibilities. So that way of, oh, I can, even though I'm trapped in that box, in that body, in the pain, I can actually fly out and I can be flying over there. So I had to fabricate ways to open up and to be free. And I do believe that spacious, so that helped me. And I kind of think it might be also a pattern for people who are trapped in a disaster or people who are in a concentration camp. I kind of also heard of those stories.
Thank you for sharing, Kara.
Yeah,
I think it's this practice, to call it, it's called active imagination, if I'm not mistaken. And there is one it's probably one of my favorite examples and stories ever. Is from a concentration, let's say, survivor that is called Robert Desnos, and he was actually on their way to the concentration camp in the truck. He was able to craft a story, let's say, that he enacted out, that eventually led to the guards to feel so connected with everyone that they actually returned them back, and a lot of people got saved. So it's a very nice story that maybe even in the grimest situations we can actually, there is always hope and maybe also a solution. So thank you for sharing that. It reminded me of that story too.
thank you. Okay, I will show the clip now. Hold to your seats. Let's see if it works. Ta-da. Okay, there it is.
So letting John participate a bit too.
Yeah, John, you're like. So it takes some time. There it is. John is praying. Okay, there we go.
But, and this is what I said to Mark, if reciprocal narrowing is a thing, then so is its opposite, reciprocal opening. That I can enhance my flexibility and open up the affordance space in my world, and I can reciprocally open up the agent and arena. And what's powerful about that is that when you get into reciprocal opening, you experience love. Love is not an emotion. Oh, I'm so tired of that. And most of all, it's not a feeling. When you love someone, that can make you angry, sad, happy, frustrated. Love is an existential mode. It's an agent arena way of being. Love is reciprocal opening. And if I put you into a situation, this has been shown experimentally, where you start to reciprocally open, even with another person, you will start to experience love for them. Where's the place that I argued is the nexus for participatory knowing and therefore transforming it? Well, it's movement. It's movement. Notice how even in the core of religions, when we try and talk about people going through a huge transformation, we combine perspectival and participatory movement. We have this term, metanoia. There's the meta again, by the way. It's translated poorly, like converting to a religion, as if you're a chemical. What it means is moving and turning around so that I have a new perspective and therefore a new identity is possible for me.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Sorry, John, for interrupting. Okay. So what do you guys think about reciprocal opening and love? I do like the idea of movement. That's the way I get out of that thing. That how Ebenezer described it. It's movement. You have to climb out.
Yeah, and it's like you're breaking the pattern. Because to stop it, you can't necessarily go the opposite way. Oh, my car.
Hey, Ebenezer.
To stop it, you can't necessarily go the opposite way, but it's almost like you have to break the pattern in some sense. I don't know exactly how. I can't really imagine that. But I think the example that you gave of when you were lying down and all you could see was the ceiling and the trees outside, and then it's almost like you changed your perspective by imagining yourself outside, so you can literally see more with your imagination, and that opened up your arena, the environment in which you are engaging with. Yeah. That's
one
Continue,
thing
please.
that can happen. Go ahead.
No, continue. Yeah.
If one of the things that can help with the meaning crisis is, and I think John said that, to fall in love with being, to fall in love with life. Because when you love, you accepting life being the world the way it is and wanting it to get better and like changing in order to make yourself bigger to accommodate more of the world. And one psychotechnology that has helped me in the past, and it still helps me, is this idea of rebirth. And the religion that I grew up with, you are born to develop and I think the Buddhists believe that the Buddhists believe that too. So being born as a human is an opportunity to learn and to develop and to accumulate experiences, to be more of you. So everything that happens to you, it's something that gives you a possibility to learn and to develop and to be more. And that gives you, again, this bigger framing that we were talking about, that gives you the meaning and that helps you not get stuck into the discomfort, into the pain, and now that I'm thinking about it, when I'm sitting in meditation and a fly crawls on my nose, and that it's very uncomfortable. And then I can like practice a lot of things. I can practice, okay, now I'm learning to be with discomfort.
Yes. Yeah. And you can reciprocate. Oh my God, you can reciprocate.
And it's awesome because it's so harmless, you know. I know that that's nothing bad that's happening because of this discomfort. So
it's interesting that you raised that particular example, because it's happened to me as well many times, and I have seen myself reciprocally narrow with it, but also at the same time open with it. And it's almost like the fly lands on your nose, you judge it as bad, and then what I do is I start to imagine that it's like a big spider or something, and it's gonna suck up all the blood from me, and then I start shaking it, and I shake it away. Yeah, and then the same thing happens again, and I assume the same thing, but with reciprocally open, it's like, oh, this is it becomes an opportunity, and it's like the changing in perspective where you're allowing yourself to see more in the situation. It's like, this is an opportunity for growth.
It's a great training ground because it's so harmless, that so meaningless in the
yeah.
Okay. So welcome, Carl. We already moved on to reciprocal opening. So ways out of reciprocal narrowing. I wanted to ask you, like, thank you for joining. If you would like to add something to the previous part, if you have seen it.
Thank you. I've unfortunately I've only heard conversations about reciprocal narrowing, so I have not watched that, but I found it to be really useful, and already listening to what you guys are talking about. Ebenezer, great to see you with the actually be able to see your face this time. Good to meet you.
Yeah.
Peter, Harris, Valeria, Kara, thanks for setting this up. This reciprocal narrowing, and opening, I had two experiences yesterday. Well, both of them were kind of a victory over the past. I was at work, and my wife is working with me, and we're doing some maintenance on a house. And I'm supposed to be the one that knows everything in my mind. And then she said something, and she knew what was going on better than I did, and I felt embarrassed. And I tried to hide it. And as I hid it, the more I hid it, the more it became about that thing. Everything in our relationship became about that thing I was trying to hide. And I said something that wasn't as kind and appreciative as I would have liked, and she left. And I was just burning with horror, like, oh my God, she's probably hates me, and she's probably called a lawyer already. She's gonna divorce me. And I'm like, Carl, you're being pretty crazy. You know how to fix this. And when she came back, I just said, I said something like, I admitted that I was embarrassed. And I acknowledged that I was embarrassed. And then all of a sudden that opened everything up. That honesty and authenticity opened everything up. And my horizons got wider, and I'm like, oh, what can't I do? Like this is I'm connected with her. She's my practice for being with humanity. I can be honest with her. I can be honest with other people. I can get beyond some of my character defects and experience the world. And who knows what ways I can do that if I can have more authenticity and stuff. Does that speak at all to reciprocal narrowing and opening, or am I completely off base?
It sounds very present to me, in the sense that it's almost like the reaction to, I guess, the stress that you are experiencing, or no, not stress, embarrassment. The stress would be like you have exams, or you failed a test, and you go out and drink. But it seems like in your case, you chose honesty, and that opened up the possibilities for your agency in your environment.
Yeah.
So it allowed you to interact in a more enriching way with your wife.
That's right. And like my right brain conceived of this as a good thing to keep to save my face, to make it so, like, that's what it grasped. And I just remember Joseph Campbell saying, it's the grasper that needs to be killed. And if I conceive, it's like, conceive is like an intensifier. The con is like really grasp. To accept is to completely accept, to open. It's more of an opening. I have to keep opening to grasp what's happening. And so I accepted that I was embarrassed and admitted it, and it led to opening. Yeah.
My favorite quote from Valeria. Thank you for sharing that, Carl.
Thank you. Yeah, was that completely off base there, or?
I think Valeria has a solution there. Like, she found it. Valeria, would you read that part from Mark Lewis, where he kind of talked about addiction as reciprocal narrowing and the way we come out from the addiction? Sorry, you're muted.
I'm muted. I don't think that he mentioned the going out, but he was describing when people fall into addiction, their environments shrink around them. Good friends, stable relationship, stable romantic partners, available family loving members, physical comforts such as a place to live, job opportunity, and all the rest of it gradually become less available. The opportunities for getting them back also become less available. Our attention and motivation, riveted now only to one source of satisfaction, lose their connection to other sources of satisfaction that normal people enjoy. We focus on what is in front of us. We focus only on what is in front of us and forget how to go after other rewards. So the other rewards fade away in availability. They evaporate. They get lost. That's what I was reading when we first started. That's why I was like so.
Thank you. Thanks. I apologize for being late. one of the reasons I was late was because I had to go to a 12-step meeting because of my substance problems that I had in the past. And I'm really, it's really alive for me, that reciprocal narrowing. Mhm.
So the ways out of it, basically, the way we get out of that.
Yeah.
So reciprocal opening is broadening our possibilities, so that the field gets wider. We have more possibilities other than, let's say, just go to the same pre-learned solution, let's say a liquid desensitizer, as I call it. And
there's one thing that I wanted to throw out there, is that one thing that has helped me in many occasions, also with depression, is not to expect that everything will be solved like that. Like when you're on a swing and you see somebody swinging. When I was a child, I would see children swinging all by themselves and going very, very high. And I was trying to, like, with my feet, give an impulse so that I would go high. And it obviously never worked, because what happens is that you have to go bit by bit, and at the right moment, give an impulse there, and at the right moment, give an impulse here, and get into this loop of opening. So if I am depressed at home and everything feels like a drag, and I am getting upset at myself because I'm not going to this party with 100 people, that is obviously making it worse. So I give myself the permission to congratulate myself for going around the block once. And then maybe the next day I will go 2 blocks, and then I will go to the supermarket and reciprocally open slowly, allowing for not, because that's the thing, it's the loops.
Yeah.
You take one step, and when you do it, that step, you see more, and then you take another step. So I wanted to put that one out there as not a solution, but something that I find important.
Valeria. Yeah, please.
So I remember from watching episode 13 about this parasitic processing and reciprocal narrowing. One of the things that Vervaeke said is that anytime you try to intervene in parasitic processing to fix the reciprocal narrowing, what ends up happening is it self-organizes, the parasitical processing self-organizes around your intervention, and it sustains itself for the same reason that you sustain yourself. And so it's notoriously difficult to overcome. And one of the things that I've always resented is this idea that you could overcome addiction with willpower alone. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that anybody can overcome an addiction just with raw willpower. I think you have to do something like what Vervaeke prescribed, which is cultivating a counteractive dynamical system that operates for you instead of against you. And so I think there's something that has to do with this, his ecology of practices, as he calls it, that is something that operates so fundamental or so deep that it's able to counteract the parasitical processing. Because anything that you just exercise with your will in the here and now is ultimately going to be really up here, or something that's really shallow. And so you have to operate at a level that it's operating at. And that's something that's going to be very, very deep or very, very fundamental. And that's going to be something like what Carl was talking about. I've been through AA as well. And I remember having to memorize all the 12 steps and things like that. And so it's something that you make a part of your life, and it opens up the possibility for real change. And what John was talking about before, also about with love. I was talking with a friend the other day about this concept of love being an existential mode, because John was the first to open up that idea for me. And he said, no, love's just a feeling. It's just an emotion. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And like, I was getting really frustrated with it. I was like, we're not in a reciprocally opening relationship here. Kind of ironic, but I remember I was trying to talk with him about this idea about love being an existential mode, and he was very closed off to it and said, no, love is just a feeling, love is just an emotion. And I wasn't able to get more insight, I guess, from him regarding what love could be. And love is something that's very confusing to me. I don't know what it is. But Vervaeke said it's something that occurs when you participate within this reciprocal opening. And he says it's not an emotion either. And so I don't really know what that means. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get some insight from you guys.
When my husband drives me crazy, or when I drive him
That's a
crazy.
good way to start.
Shout out Valeria's husband.
we love each other, but I'm just getting there. The emotion very often is very unpleasant, right? But it's an existential mode because we trust each other that I trust him that he's not driving me crazy on purpose, and I am not driving him crazy on purpose. So we need to open ourselves, open our space of possibilities, in which when I try to understand why is he doing that thing, and when he tries to understand why am I doing that thing, we are seeing more possibilities about how people are. And when I learn to not be driven crazy by that thing that it's important for him, for example, when one person has a need for being organized, that's more than the other person. Like for me, he looked like a neat freak. Like how can you just be so pedantic about where the things go? And obviously for him, I looked like a super messy person. In learning to be with it, we got more flexibility in the level of mass, or in the level of needing to have everything clean. Both of us learned to be more. The possibilities of who we could be as an agent increased, and then the possibilities of the arenas that we could engage with comfortably, a messy house or a house that could not have like one speck of dust, also increased. It's a practical example of love as a reciprocal opening.
Yeah, it's like you have a particular character that could reciprocally narrow, but it's like you're opening yourself up to somebody else's, I guess, action or agency, like opening up a perspective of somebody else and allowing it to, I guess, change the way you think and act.
And change who I am.
Yeah. Eventually changing who you are.
Yeah.
But it starts with you allowing like him to clean up this mess, even though you're like, oh, it's not necessary. Or him, I guess, being okay with you leaving a plate for 10 more minutes while you talk to him instead of washing the dishes immediately. And then over time, as you open up to each other's perspectives, it gives you a more encompassing perspective. And that will keep you from reciprocally narrowing.
I mean, where does flexibility come in? Like we started by dividing, okay, that's your space and you do whatever you want in it. So I can surround myself with my creative mess around here, the part that you're not seeing behind the camera. And but then the other spaces where like the kitchen is, we keep it very clean because he likes now that I'm thinking about it, he adapted more than I did.
Yeah, very lucky.
Valeria, when you were talking about walking around the block. And those little steps, I just thought about this faith that I need to have, when I'm in depression or anxiety. Like, if I just accept the next moment as it is, I'm like, I can't, in that state of depression or anxiety, I'm like, I can't accept this moment. How am I going to accept every moment now till the end of the day I die? And then it's kind of like, oh, if I open that door, it's just going to open this door, and there's this faith that I have to build faith by just accepting this moment. Because when I open the door, I don't know what's on the other side, and I think I do. I have to, but it struck me that there's a faith that needs to happen, and that there's there's an opportunity for some kind of love. I was trying to tie that into, Peter, what you were asking about, you brought up about love. And I guess what set me off on this whole course was Corinthians 13. I was reading, I don't know why I was reading it. It was just bugging me. And I was like, I was reading different versions of it. And, it says, I forget exactly what verse it is, but it's like, love, if you can speak, you can sing like an angel, but you don't have love, charity, like the different translations for love, charity, I forget what else, all these other things, then it's nothing. It's like tinkling empty tin bells. And if you can speak like a sage, but you don't have love, charity, all the other things, it's like you're an idiot. It's just like you're like as dumb as earth or something like that. I forget. It's poetic, but, and then I was like, and then there's the part, if you give all your money and your possessions to the poor, but don't have love, charity, something else. And I was like, wait a second, like there was a big record scratch. And I was like, wait, charity, if giving all my stuff to other people is not charity, what are we talking about? This is a horrible translation. Charity means nothing here. And I was like, what was Paul saying when he wrote that? And he did it in Greek, and he said agape. If you don't have agape, so he was meaning something really specific. And agape, I don't have a definitive thing. I just have this working definition for myself that kind of has reciprocal opening to everything. For me, is that agape is how God sees me and how God sees you. And that opens to everything for me. In somebody, right when I came on the call, somebody was talking about this reframing, constantly reframing. And if I agree with Jordan Peterson in saying like God is the frame of frames, then perceptually, for me, this is I know I'd love to hear how it strikes you. It's not, these are just words, that I don't know, but, can mean anything to you guys, but practicing the headless way, the frame of all that every single other frame of my life is in is this blankness, this nothingness that my sensations happen in. And I can't really see it. I can't really hear it, but I know it's there. It's so I won't go into my long song and dance about that, but there's this blankness that I can perceive in a way, not with my eyes, but I know it's there because it's what makes my vision, the information carrying part of my visual field has a shape, but I don't see what gives it that shape. I don't see anything outside of it. There's this blankness. What if it's, the Arabs say, God is closer to you than your hand is. Like, what if, like, I think, what if just seeing like John says, seeing my vision, but not looking through it, looking at my vision, but not looking through it. Just that act right there, it seems unremarkable when I'm not in horrible anxiety, depression, or physical pain. But when I am in horrible pain, if I notice the blankness that it's happening in for the duration that I'm noticing that blankness, that pain becomes just a sensation among all the other sensations.
Carl, I actually, as you were talking about shifting your attention to nothingness, I brought up a story where I would shift my attention away from pain to the outside of my body, to the birds. So it might be the same process in place. I cannot explain it scientifically, so there are no words for it like that I can find. It's just like something that a child does.
I think it's what children do all the time. I think that blankness is what kids are like walking around going, why is nobody talking about how my vision is floating in emptiness? I guess it doesn't mean anything. Ignore it.
Yeah, but we forget it. We forget to pay attention to that. But it's like it feels like it's a mechanism in place. I wanted to hear maybe Harris on that.
Yeah, basically, shout out, first of all, this conversation so far is very satisfying, and I am gaining a lot of things from it. So thanks to everyone. Shout out to the Kyoto school at this point, and basically to Nishitani, who he was the student of Kitaro Nishita. And of course, John is interested into the Kyoto school, and he's been referencing it a lot. And what I just wanted to add at this point is that one possible way to link Nishitani's work with John's notion of reciprocal narrowing is to see nihilism as a form of parasitic processing that narrows our cognitive and existential horizons. And in such a way, we can make this link and also realize the existential aspects of these notions. And this is what I wanted to add at this point. So it has to do also seeing through nothingness, moving beyond nihilism, of course. And that is something that John is really focuses on. And this is the way to awaken, once again, awaken from the main crisis. Now, another small thing that I wanted to add at this point is that it has to do with what Carl was mentioning before in terms of how the kids perceive this nothingness, and maybe they don't really understanding because it's so, let's say, it's something that happens on the substrate, let's say, of thought. So it's not very easy to realize what is going on. But I want to link that with one saying that a chess grandmaster from the United States, namely Bobby Fischer, once said on a video interview with Dick Cavett, that basically he was trying to explain something very simple, that is as simple as a basic rule of chess. And he said that the pawn can't stay the pawn when it reaches the other end. So when you reach the other end, you cannot actually say, I'm gonna upgrade the pawn to a pawn. You cannot do that. You need to actually put your imagination according to the actual game that is going on, like the interaction. And you have to make as a conscious agent the decision of how to progress and how to exactly upgrade that thing. But one thing that is there for certain is that the pawn can stay the pawn when it reaches the other end. So that's what I wanted to say.
Peter, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just wanted to echo what Carl had to say about 1 Corinthians 13. If I have not loved, then I am nothing. And in some translations, they use the word charity instead. And I think you're right that they don't accurately capture that actual true meaning. And I should clarify context. I have been in an AA group before, but it wasn't for substance abuse. I went to a mental health treatment facility, and they had an AA group there, and everybody had to participate regardless if they suffered from substance abuse or not. And I found that even though I didn't struggle with that problem particularly, that part was the most effective part of the treatment. And it was centered around this idea that was like love, but it wasn't exactly like how I understood love at the time. And I think I'm coming to realize that that's what love really is. And so, yeah, I think it's captured perfectly in 1 Corinthians 13 about, if you don't have that thing, then everything that you do or are is ultimately nothing. Carl was saying something about focusing your attention to the nothingness, and when you're suffering, and then children have this ability. And I remember that there's this common theme in religious or wisdom texts about how you have to become a child again to be enlightened or something like that. Like, it seems kind of backwards. But I've read that in the Bible before. I've read that in Tao Te Ching, and there was some other Chinese text where it says that unless you become like a little child, you have to, you won't understand this core principle that's very wise or something like that. So anyways, that's what I was thinking.
I think we can say, go ahead, Kara.
Please, no, please, Valeria, I've talked enough.
I actually wanted to call out Valeria.
See, I'm reading mind. I'm thinking about learned ignorance. And so when you are an adult, you get you learn, right? And then you learn to see the world in a certain way. So there is some narrowing that happens there. Maybe there's this being like a child again has to learn to understand that the world is not only what you see. We were talking about relevance realization and the processes that makes things appear as relevant to us, and how we do that by ignoring most of the world. So that's all the possibilities that we are ignoring of how the world can be, how I can be in the world, how the arena can be, how me as an agent can be. And one of the things that you need to learn is that learn your ignorance about all the things that you're not seeing. Become like the child with the beginner's mind. The Buddhists like to talk about the beginner's mind, and open yourself again to all the possibilities that you are not. So then you can learn. When the cup is empty, when the cup is full, you cannot pour anything more into it. That was what I was trying to relate everything that has been said.
Let's see. Good. To me, that sounds like what Carl was talking about when he was talking about being aware of the nothingness. It's almost like learning the things that you do not know, and opening yourself up to it. And it seems like if I don't know how this will connect, but when Carl was talking about engaging in everything with love, I was trying to think of the opposite of that, something like stress. When you're getting angry while you're helping people, in a sense, and how that can like bring about reciprocal narrowing. I've been trying to think how those can play with each other. And it's almost like the stress is, or you being angry with a situation can connect you to other angry situations where you were angry, and it turns a good action bad, but it's almost like it's only in your head. You'd say that the action of, let's say, I guess, good, honest work is helpful for other people, but because of the way that you're engaging with it, it is parasitic for you, because it associates negative connotations in your head and makes it more difficult to participate in the good. And yeah, that's what I was thinking about it.
Thank you, Ebenezer. I wanted, before we close up, just go one more round about your ways of getting out, or the ways you read that work for other people, if you had none of those experiences. Getting out of this negative spiral that narrows your environment to almost a tunnel vision, where you focused either, if it's OCD, to perfect something and you can only focus on that, or your, yeah, like we mentioned many examples of reciprocal narrowing, where our environment and we interact and we get more and more and more and more into a very focused, dense place. Although so one thing that I remember from John's last clip that we showed, movement, constant movement. And if you cannot physically move, move with your mind, move your mind. It's a hot mic, whoever picks up first. Yeah.
I'll try. Cultivate good relationships, friendships of virtue, people that are together with you, trying to figure out what the good is and how to aim for it. Go to the Discord on Monday and do the dialogues with us.
Yeah.
Don't spend all day in front of the computer and in front of screens. That's very narrowing. Go outside, do other people, meet other people, do service, go out in the sun, movement, spiritual practices. Meditation is very good for cognitive flexibility. Cultivating healthy habits of mental and bodily hygiene. Out of the care for yourself, with the knowing that you're doing it out of love, not out of. Those are the things that I'm thinking about right now. There's certainly more, but those are the first that come to my mind right now.
Yeah, that's good, Valeria. That's good advice to everyone. So what I wanted to say as part of this conclusive statement is that basically reciprocal narrowing has to do with notions of self-doubt, as I understand it, and reciprocal opening can also have can also be associated with some sort of notion of self-worth, let's say, so that I am not alone, that I can help also others by reaching out, and hopefully by doing so I can also benefit my own self, let's say. So yeah, there are different ways to practice and cultivate reciprocal opening. One of them is the one that I've mentioned in the first part of this live stream is maybe we can perform an exchange between our, we can drop one addiction and pick up a good hobby, let's say. Maybe it's something that you never tried before, like painting. There is no, let's say, shame in being childlike and trying things for the first time. And there is a special kind of joy that also arises from that. And also what we discuss about this notion of movement, actually being related with reciprocal opening. Yes, it's true. I was trying to remember some scientists, they I don't know if it was Einstein. He said that a lot of times he liked to go for these long walks, and because he was doing this movement, he was able to, let's say, progress a bit on the problem he was trying to tackle. So yeah, also from my personal experience, taking these walks it's also very helpful, and also to try to even a bit to push yourself sometimes to socialize, even if you do not feel, let's say, very open to do that. Do it, and then you will face your the truth, let's say, of the matter, and you will find out that it's much smoother than you expected and even more beneficial. So that's it.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just sort of reiterate what you two have already said, which has been really great. But I also did want to add on what Valeria said before, which was CBT. I think CBT is a very powerful tool for overcoming reciprocal narrowing. I mean, it's got all the tool sets within it for I think that would address it particularly. There's I mean, especially that one of the expectation, you know, that can help you get more acute awareness regarding what's actually your options that you have available and which ones you don't, kind of like relating to that Stoic principle as well. And I know that the ecology of practices that Vervaeke talks about, that the ones that address parasitic processing at that fundamental level is extremely important for establishing that counteractive dynamical system. You can't just eliminate bad habits. You have to replace them with something else, because in eliminating, if you just try to eliminate them, they'll fight back with a vengeance. And so you have to offer something that's better than what's already there. You can't just kill it. And so so I think you have to come in with the right attitude, and that attitude seems to be one that's agapically oriented, one that's radiating with this love. And so so yeah, it seems to be the solution for reciprocal narrowing is also has to do with the solution with the perennial problems. It's connecting yourself to the world, connecting yourself to other people, connecting yourself to yourself, and having this radical connection such that you have the ability to be so flexible and fluid and dynamic that you can restructure or reframe anything that you need to for any given moment, and zoom out and zoom in as needed. And so that's what I would say.
Thank you. Ebenezer?
Yeah, it was very interesting. While you were talking, it helped me, I guess, realize more about the ways that I was trying to counteract reciprocal narrowing. But it seems to me one thing I do socially is, or not just in social situations, but in almost everything that I approach, it's but before I approach it, I try to look at the automatic assumptions that I have of it, and that will allow me to consciously engage better with a particular activity. Yeah. So if, like, I guess before you engage with something, you understand the automatic assumptions, it wouldn't lead you to reciprocal. It wouldn't lead you to a parasitical reaction to your environment. But another thing that would help is, I guess, a daemon in the Socratic sense. That's what I've been trying to cultivate. It's been interesting. Like I would have you try to find, I guess, good friends is what I'm doing. But more than that, it's like an intellectually sound voice. But it's not just one voice. So I guess listening to good philosophers or reading from good philosophers and psychologists, things like that, so that when the situation arises, when you're jumping to an assumption, the voice that counteracts it is one that draws you to a better place, like a better center, so that you're not on one extreme or the other. Yeah. I think that's what I've been doing.
Thank you. So like all the ways you open up your knowledge, you expand your knowledge into philosophers, psychologists.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Benedetta. Carl?
Thank you. This has been really enjoyed this conversation, and also listening to everybody's sound advice and reminders of what to do. I think one thing is to, like, one of the most fundamental things is, like Einstein said, the most important, this is what I read on the internet, I don't know if it's true, but I read that Einstein said that the most important question that I'm supposed to ask is the universe friendly? And it seems like if I look for love, then I find love. And if I look for hate, I find hate. So, the glasses I have on seem to determine the character of God. It's either a loving God or a punishing God. And the an ecology of practices such as the 12 steps, which are an awesome an ecology of practices that happily incorporate what John talks about, and also includes prayer, a lot of prayer, and confession, which is a great way to use other people. Like when I confessed about my anxiety, and just telling another human being I'm having difficulty, like I've learned to do in the dialogos, just saying like, I'm having difficulty with this, connects me to the universe, or to humanity. I've told another human being and they've gone, oh, I know what it's like to have difficulty. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not a monster. So an ecology of practices, confession and connection, yeah, I don't know. I think it takes a miracle. So pray to your daemon for miracles. Ask him for just a help. That's a good one. Thanks for letting me participate.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Valeria to bring it all together before I close.
I think that that is above me, Karen. I don't.
Okay.
I think I can add something to what Carl was saying and to what Peter was saying and to what we all were saying. And that has to do with cognitive flexibility. And so there are a lot of difficult things in the world out there, right? And I'm not saying that never pay attention to them. That's not what I'm going to say. But every time that we are afraid and every time that we are angry, it's related to something that we care about. If we are afraid of losing something that we care about. If we are angry, we are trying to defend something that we care about. So, and negative emotions reduce our cognitive flexibility, reduce our space of possibilities. So when confronted with those things, connect with the thing that you care about and act on the basis of love. That's from Forrest Landry. That is, I think, something that captures some of what has, I don't know. I hope it helped.
Yeah. So little announcement before we close. I would like to thank you, everybody in the live chat. Thank you so much for the comments and for the advices. I really enjoy your participation, and it's valuable to me. I always feel seen when you guys are active. And Valeria has events on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server, as well as Carl. So check it out. And Peter
as well as Kara.
Yeah, me too. Peter has created a glossary of Vervaekeanisms. Also check it out on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis server. Harris has a great YouTube channel. Check it out. And Ebenezer, artist. And look in the art section and also participate. Guys, thank you so much. Leave me comments. Perhaps there is some suggestions for the next live stream. I would appreciate it. Everybody in the panel, again, you guys were awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.